Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi, and today we're going to be taking a look at a new limited edition brush set from CHIKUHODO. This is the 2023 Chocolat collection. So yes, it's 2022 right now. We're at the end of the year. The 2023, we're looking at more of the new year. And these handles here, I mean, look at these. These are inspired by bittersweet chocolate. So we're going more from the deep chocolate bitter tones all the way to something sweet and sugary. So we have something that is going to be pink down here with some shimmer. And I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous handle. You can see that the ferrule, goes along with the gradient. I think it was done really, really well. So I love the handles. There is another CHIKUHODO brush set that came out for this holiday season as well, and that is the Framboise set. I did not pick that one up. And this set, we have 5 brushes. It comes with this case here. You can see this is going to be a soft pale gold. This is going to be a synthetic leather. And we have a flap here on the back. You can see this is actually lined with like a brushed material here, very soft. And you can, slip things in here. It does zip all the way around, and inside we have some plastic vinyl here. This one is actually sewn in. This is just in case your brushes are dirty resting on there. But this flap, can go over like a dirty brush if you want to separate dirty from clean, or, however you want to do that. So we do have one flap and one, stationary piece. And your brushes just slip in and it closes up. So nice case. Let's go ahead and take a look at each of the brushes in this collection. So first up, this is the powder brush, and mine is dirty right now, but you can see it does have a round ferrule here. And according to CHIKUHODO, this actual brush has a special tip. It is going to have an aligned top surface, which essentially just means that you've got kind of this flat surface on the top, and that's supposed to give you a shiny, even finish when you are using it. You can see the movement here. Now let's look at some demos. You can use this brush for a variety of purposes. It is a powder brush, so it's going to work really well with setting powder. It's going to give you a soft buff with finishing powder, but it's a very soft brush, meaning that you're not really going to truly buff in anything with this. It's not dense enough for that. And this is made out of CHIKUHODO goat hair. So you can also use this. I use this today. If you're using I used a shimmery blush. I used one of the Sicily L'Orchidee blushes today. And I wanted to just get a very soft wash of color and kind of have it kind of blurred on the edges. Not really, like in a specific spot. So kind of just a soft effect of the color. And so I used the powder brush for that as well. So this works for blush, bronzer, powders, and so forth. But ideally, it is technically a powder brush, and based on its size, it's probably going to be its best function. Now, looking at this brush, you can see we've got this round ferrule. It's going to be pretty soft on the skin. I mean, it's CHIKUHODO goat hair, which is going to be one of the higher qualities of goat hair. Very soft, undyed, so you don't have to worry about having anything like damp or any residues on your skin. And let's take a look at a few comparisons. My first comparison, this is the Rephr brush. You can see it's going to be a little bit longer with the handle. This is the Rephr 30. And I wanted to compare this because this one also has a round ferrule. So if we look at just the brush heads, you can see that the Rephr is going to be a little bit longer in hair. We also have kind of that flattened top there. They're going to be very similar in shape, but the Rephr is going to be a little bit bigger all around. And then I also wanted to take a look at this CHIKUHODO brush. This is part of the Winter Light set. And I will put the number of this brush, because it's also present in the permanent collection, on the screen. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. I really wish CHIKUHODO would label these things. But you can see this one's also going to have your round ferrule, but notice that the hairs are a little bit longer in the CHIKUHODO, but we don't really have that flattened top. This is going to be more of a curve all around. It's going to be gradual and subtle, but that is going to be one of the major differences between these powder brushes. those are going to be my two main comparisons. Honestly, I love round ferrule brushes. I don't have too many of those, surprisingly. So I think this is a really nice addition for me to my collection, and I could not pass up these handles. Let's move on to the cheek brush. So this cheek brush here, okay, you can see we've got a flat round shape. Mine did dry a little funny here, so just ignore that. The brush is absolutely fine. It came perfectly. But you can see that we have a little bit more snap with the hairs with this than we do with like the Psycho goat hair. And that's because this brush is going to be a mix of pine squirrel and horsehair. So there's just a little bit more sturdiness for this. This will apply your color a little bit more densely, and it works really well in a patting motion. And, you know, you can see it's not going to work quite as well with a swirling motion. So if you are somebody who likes to swirl your blush, notice because these fibers have a little bit more snap, it gets a little bit more jerky when you are swirling because the fibers will kind of snap to one location. So just something to note there. This is going to be best for either patting or sweeping. And let's look at some demos here while we talk a little bit more about this. Now, I was really interested in this brush set in particular because of the presence of so many pine squirrel brushes, which is a hair fiber I have not explored too much yet. I have a couple of eye brushes from Eyeshadow, but that's really it. So I really was interested in this. And this blush brush actually combines a little bit of horsehair and pine squirrel in it. The horsehair does help give it a little bit more structure, and we have a little bit more snap here. And again, that's going to make this brush really good for tapping or sweeping. And this is going to, because of the firmness of this, and you know, this is really soft on the skin, but you've got a little bit more pickup than your blue or gray squirrel brushes that we might be more familiar with. And you know, this structure of the bristles here, you know, the pine squirrel has a little bit more diameter in each hair than the gray or blue squirrel hair fibers. So that alone is going to allow it to get a little bit more pickup and distribute the product a little bit more firmly on your skin. So you're actually going to get more pigmentation, a little bit of a, if blue and gray squirrel give you a soft application, this one's going to be more medium. So it's going to give you a little bit more pigmentation from your products here, and it really kind of distributes them exactly where you put them. So I really like this brush. I think it's very soft. Sometimes pine squirrel can feel a little bit more pokey than something like blue or gray squirrel, and that's definitely true if you were to do more of a stippling motion with this. But if you're using this brush the way it's intended, it is just incredibly soft. So these hairs are still going to be softer than goat hair, and they just feel very, very silky, just a little bit thicker than the gray or blue squirrel brushes. So just a few comparisons with this. Okay, you can see, first of all, I think the appearance of pine squirrel is gorgeous. I love the natural gradient in the hairs. And, you know, this is going to be flat round. And this one here is the Suku cheek brush. This is a squirrel brush that is discontinued. You can see this is also flat round, but notice the ferrule is going to be much more narrow. This kind of fans out a little bit more. And that's, again, because these fibers are going to be a little bit softer and airier. Notice this works actually really well for swirling or sweeping, whereas the pine squirrel, you can tell how much more structure you have with the hairs than this. So the overall shape is going to be fairly similar with the length and the taper here on the edges, but you can see that this is really fanning out more. It's going to be a much airier brush. Another comparison here, this is the Designer Pro from Sonia G. You can see that the handle is going to be a little bit longer in the Sonia G, but notice that our shape is going to be a little different. So this is going to be more tapered. This comes more to a point than this. We have more of a flattened top in the CHIKUHODO. You can see that this is also going to be kind of a pinched ferrule here, but it's going to be more narrow than the CHIKUHODO. And overall, this is kind of in between a ball and candle shape, whereas this is going to be more of your traditional flat round. Now, just notice this is dyed goat hair. You can see that this has a little bit, now you can see that the Sonia G is going to be dyed goat hair here, and we have kind of this soft, silky, airy feel. Not quite as much, there's more substance than the Suku brush we just looked at, but you can see that it's still going to be looser and airier than this CHIKUHODO. And then another comparison here, this is the Wayne Goss airbrush. And you can see we do have that flat round shape, but this is going to be more to a point here. It's more tapered on the edges. And you can see that the Wayne Goss is going to be more narrow. So this, you know, if you're actually looking at the hair fibers here, we're going to start getting a little bit longer here, very gradually up here to a center point where we have more of this like ridge. And, you know, kind of similar here, except we're starting down a little bit lower, and it's more of a steeper climb, whereas this is going to be a little bit more gradual. You can kind of see that there's a little bit of a curve going this way. So just a few differences there. And again, this Wayne Goss brush, this one is squirrel hair. You can see it's going to be a lot airier. Next, we are looking at an eyeshadow brush, and we have our typical shader style brush, and this is going to be kind of like a medium size. And let's take a look at some demos and talk a little bit about this one. So this brush is going to be completely made out of pine squirrel hair, and you know, it's going to be pretty stiff, very, very soft though. So pigmentation, you're actually going to get more pigmentation from this than you would with a blue or gray squirrel brush, but a little bit less than an undyed or dyed goat hair, just because it is so soft and the cuticles on the hairs are going to still be very smooth. But we do have a little bit of a larger diameter here as well, and that's going to give it more structure and allow you to apply that powder a little bit more pigmented than you would with some other hair fibers like the blue or gray squirrel. So overall, this is a really nice shader brush. I think this is one I'm going to end up putting in my regular rotation. The size and shape is very similar to some of my favorites. It's a little bit larger than a couple of my favorites, but it's definitely one that you know, a size and shape that I use a lot. And this softness just makes it a dream to use. So let's look at some comparisons. This here is the Esom W23. This is sable hair. And you can see our general shape is going to be fairly similar. The CHIKUHODO actually is going to be a little bit more dense. You can see the sable hair is going to have more snap. It's stiffer. I use this one a lot for, you know, things you want to make sure stay in one place, or creams or metallics. You can see this is going to be softer. It has a little bit more bend, and yeah, it's just a really, really great brush. Another comparison here, this is from the Sonia G Lotus set. This is the worker brush. So she does have the worker brush in a few different variations. This one here is undyed goat hair. You can see it's going to be a little bit thicker than the CHIKUHODO, but the general shape is pretty similar. The worker here is a little bit boxier. You can see it's a little bit flatter than the CHIKUHODO, which is a little bit more rounded. But your general like width and length of the hairs are pretty close. Next up, we have a Tancedo brush. You can see the handles on the Tancedo are much longer. And this is from that set of 4 eyeshadow brushes. And this is going to be your second largest eyeshadow brush. So you can see that the shape and size of these, again, very, very close. You can see the Tancedo is going to be pinched a little bit more. We don't have quite as many hairs, so it's not quite as dense. Shape is going to be pretty similar, but again, this one here is, it's a little bit more of a shallow roundedness with a little tiny portion of a flat area on the top, whereas this is more completely round, but that's very, you know, kind of nitpicky there. You can see that the Tancedo, being undyed goat hair and being a little bit less dense of a brush, is going to work more, kind of more like a paintbrush. You can see how that performs, whereas this is a little bit slower to react, very soft, but the bristles, even though they're slower to react, they're a little bit stiffer still. So, and that's going to be because of the density of this. And yep, moving on, I just wanted to bring this one up because this is my most used eyeshadow brush. This is Sonia G Soft Shader. You can see it's going to be a little bit smaller overall. The general shape, the curvature of it is going to be pretty similar. The Sonia G width is ever so slightly wider, but they're pretty comparable in width. Overall, though, the Sonia G is just kind of smaller than this. And you can see that, you know, the tips of these move more freely, but the center portion of here really stays pretty firm because of that density. And here is the chocolat. Next, we have another eyeshadow brush, and you can see this is going to be more of a pencil shape brush. And let's take a look at this one in action. I think this one works really well for inner corner. You can use this for lining the eyes. You know, if you're doing something smudgy, it works really well underneath. If you are using this on the upper lash line to line something, this is going to be a pretty soft brush. So it'll work to kind of smudge things out, but you're not going to get any sort of precise line with this. It's just not quite stiff enough for this. So this is really going to be best for inner corner or under the lower lash line, in my opinion. And that's how I like to use this. But let's look at some comparisons for this. And I wanted to show you first how soft this is moving this way. You can see it swirls really well, very, very soft. This is the rougher 26 brush. You can see it's going to be a little bit larger overall. The diameter is larger. These are both going to be round ferrule. We have a very similar shape between the two. It's just that this is going to be a little bit thicker in diameter overall. So if you look at how this bends on my hand versus the CHIKUHODO is going to be softer, bends a little bit more. And again, this one is all pine squirrel. And yeah, so they're going to perform fairly similarly, but the CHIKUHODO is actually going to be just slightly softer in application as well as texturally. And another comparison here, this is from Sonia G. This is one of the fusion brushes. So this is a mix of synthetic and undyed goat hair. And you can see that this is going to be fairly stiff. So if you look at this one here, the fibers, you can see the tips are bending, but you can see that the majority of the hairs are actually not moving. That's going to be because it's very dense and because of the actual fiber types. So the CHIKUHODO is going to be much softer. So this will give you a little more structure if you need to be a little bit more precise with something, but the CHIKUHODO is going to give you kind of that softer finish. Shape-wise, you can see that the CHIKUHODO is a little bit pointier and it's going to be smaller overall. But again, same general shape and length of hairs. And last up, this is the KZ08. So this is from CHIKUHODO. It's the Kazan series, which is no longer in production. This is Kazan squirrel hair, and it is ever so soft. You can see it's going to be a larger, it's the same shape, but it's just kind of a larger version from that in the chocolat. And let's just look at these side by side. So here's the Kazan. Look at how that bends versus the pine squirrel. And the pine squirrel, you can feel that the pine squirrel kind of, the fibers kick back and, you know, return to their original position a little bit faster. You can feel that snap, but again, it's just incredibly soft. So yes, the KZ is going to be softer. It feels very silky, very soft, and the hairs are a little bit slower to bend back to position compared to the chocolat, but they're both very soft. So overall similar, but the chocolat's going to be smaller than the KZ8. And last up, we have the CHIKUHODO brow brush. And you can see here, this is going to be an angled brow brush. You can definitely use this in the brows. I feel like that's probably what most people use this for. So I wanted to share this using it kind of with eyeliner, because that's honestly, it's stiff enough to really give you a nice shape. And if you are somebody who is not good at wings like I am, this shape and size actually kind of stamps your color down perfectly. So it's kind of like if you want like a soft wing, this is a great place to, or great size and shape to actually put that color down, whether you want to blend with this one or not. It's just kind of like a great stamp for it as well. So I like it for that a lot. I find that's probably going to be my main purpose for this particular brush. But let's go ahead and take a look at a comparison. I don't have too many. I actually don't have a lot of brow brushes, but you can see this is the Byredo 11. It's synthetic. And this is not technically a brow brush. You can use it for brows, but I use it for eyeliner. You can see it's going to be longer, more narrow, thinner overall. You can see that this CHIKUHODO brow brush, look how stiff that is. And that really helps you kind of, get things exactly where you want it. Now, the fiber content for this is going to be a mix of weasel and horsehair. So it's going to be very stiff. And this, if you were, I would not be worried about using like a cream or damp brow product with this. So typically I try not to use any like cream or gel products with things that are, not undyed goat hair or synthetic, but this brush is sturdy enough. The hairs are thick enough and sturdy enough that I feel like that would totally be fine with this brush. And then I just wanted to compare this also to the CHIKUHODO Cherry Blossom set. This is a brow brush. You can see that they have a very similar shape, but this is much smaller. So it's like half the width of it. And, because it's shorter, it's not going to go, obviously you don't have quite as much of an angle there. But you can see that this one is going to be softer here. And the CHIKUHODO is going to be a little bit firmer. To say I think I like the CHIKUHODO one better just because for my purposes, it really stamps the product where you want it. And, it's just, it's going to, if you are working with it with eyeliner, you don't have to worry so much about any fallout or things going like, the bristles spewing out at all and making like a straight line. So yeah, I think I like the CHIKUHODO Chocolat eyebrow brush better personally. In summation, I would have to say I really do like the CHIKUHODO Chocolat brush set. Now, do I think this set is worth it? I think if you're somebody who is looking at trying out Pine Squirrel or you're looking for a round powder brush, I think this set is worth it because I think not only do you have the gorgeous handles, this Psycho goat hair, we are getting, it's getting harder and harder to find, big brushes with Psycho and not Sokoho goat hair. Also, like just something that doesn't have synthetics blended into it. So this is all Psycho goat hair. And, I feel like it's becoming a little bit more of a rarity. Yes, you can still find them. Look at the T series, the Takumi series from CHIKUHODO and so forth. But it is getting a little bit harder. So I do think that this is a really nice brush and, I would say it's worth it. And then we've got the Pine Squirrel cheek brush and, very, very nice. Now, again, I don't have another brush like that for comparison in the Pine Squirrel, but I do have a couple of the eye brushes from Eyeshadow, which are kind of similar, right? So, giving these a discount, I would approximate them at $30 each, right? And then you've got the brow brush, let's say maybe like $15 to $20, okay? So let's say, we've got $80 worth of brushes here. This set itself with the case costs $171 on Fude Beauty. So you're looking at $90 for these two brushes plus the case. I feel like that is very reasonable and a bit of a discount. So I do think it's worth it if you are interested in the Pine Squirrel. Personally, I think it's really soft and I think it's, a nice brush hair to use. If you want something very, very soft when it touches your skin, but you want a little bit more structure and pigmentation from it than you can get from the blue and gray squirrel brushes. So I think this is a really great option. And, it is squirrel hair still. We do still have the very smooth, cuticles and so forth on the hair. So you do still want to, focus on powder products with your squirrel hair brushes. But I think, it's a pretty good set. So I would definitely recommend this. Now, I did want to go over just briefly, we'll just take a minute here, the 3 holiday sets I picked up this year. So we've got the CHIKUHODO Cherry Blossom set. Now, this is a limited edition set. It's not technically just for holiday, and they do occasionally change out some of the brushes in there. There have been a few iterations. Look at this gorgeous gradient. We have kind of this like very soft pink going to a brighter pink with golden and pink shimmer throughout. And we do have a silver ferrule. Now, if you purchase this from CHIKUHODO USA, this set is $314. Now, we do have more brushes in this set. I forget. Let me see. Is it 7 maybe? Yes, so the CHIKUHODO Cherry Blossom set, there are 7 brushes currently in here, and we are going to be focusing mostly on undyed goat hair for the most part, but the eyeshadow brushes, we have some horsehair in here, we've got a synthetic lip brush, so you still have a mix of different fiber types. This brush set, you're getting 2 additional brushes. That's really going to be these 2, which are going to be the most different from there, but, and this is... They're great brushes, but this set overall is going to be more expensive. I do feel like the Chocolat set gives you a little bit better of a value, but I think really what's going to be worth it to you is which ones you're going to use more, which shapes are more unique to your collection. And honestly, I don't always use the brush cases and stuff that they come with, so I don't really look at those. They're just kind of like a free gift. Then I also picked up this CHIKUHODO set. This is actually a limited edition holiday set from them this year. It's called Winter Lights. You can see you've got white to kind of this pale, they're calling it lavender, but it's really more of a pinky lavender shade. And we've got more of a matte ferrule here. I think this is a really beautiful set as well. We've got, you know, undyed goat hair for a few of these brushes, but we also have a mix of horse and synthetic hair as well. Now, if you were to purchase this set on CHIKUHODO USA, it retails for $293. So it's a little bit less than the Cherry Blossom set. Also has one more brush than the CHIKUHODO Chocolat set. So honestly, I think all three sets are really great, and it really just depends on which brushes you're going to want to use more in your collection. I love this cheek brush here in the Winter Light set. You know, this is one of my favorite shapes and sizes, so I absolutely love that. We've got a few different shapes and sizes in here, like this wispy brush here, which you can use for crease, you can use for highlight, so forth. So, you know, it really is going to just depend on what you want to use them for. Now, one other thing to note, the CHIKUHODO brush set, the brush shape. Now, just one other thing to note between CHIKUHODO and CHIKUHODO brush sets. The CHIKUHODO brush sets always use, you know, brush shapes and styles that are present in their permanent line. So you can find the same brushes individually just with like a regular handle. So that's something to note there. Whereas the CHIKUHODO, you know, their brush like naming and collections and so forth, they kind of organize everything a little differently. So they do not, you know, you might have a very similar shape in the CHIKUHODO collection, but it's not going to be labeled or identified as such. And there will probably be little tweaks to those brushes for any of the holiday brushes to make them a little bit more one of a kind. So just something to note there. You're not going to see like flat out dupes typically with the CHIKUHODO holiday sets, but you will with the CHIKUHODO. So if you already have some of those brushes in your collection, it might be, you know, something that turns you off of a holiday collection just because you already have that one. Now, overall, looking at these brush sets, I have to say I don't really have a favorite set overall because I think they're all gorgeous. My handles that I love the most would be the CHIKUHODO Cherry Blossom because you've got, you know, I just think they are stunning. I absolutely love the way they look. Those are probably my favorite handles, but I have a favorite brush from each of the collections. The Winter Lights, this cheek brush is a favorite. From the Cherry Blossom is the powder brush that is an angle brush, which is a little different from all the other ones that I have. And then in this new Chocolat collection, I would have to say it's this cheek brush because it's just very different for me from what else I already have from my blush brushes. So if you are somebody who so for me personally, if I had to pick one particular collection to get, I would have to say that based off of my collection, which has a lot of Rephr and Sonia G brushes and things like that, a lot of goat hair brushes already, which honestly is my favorite to use. For that reason, I would pick the Chocolat set just because it's something different from what I have. But I love goat hair brushes, so I love all of these sets. And I do think that, you know, when we're looking at holiday sets next year, we're going to see a lot more like goat and synthetic mixes and things like that throughout the entire set. And that's why I wanted to pick these up now. I'm kind of thinking, you know, this is the time to buy brushes that are full of natural hair without having a blend. And that's what I wanted to focus on. And you know, so if you are kind of on the fence about all of these, I would definitely think about that and consider, you know, where the brush market is kind of headed. We are definitely going to be looking at more synthetic mixes over the next few years. And we're also going to be looking at higher price tags on things that are going to be, you know, fully composed of one particular hair type, particularly like a goat or a squirrel type without having any sort of blend, whether it's squirrel mixed with goat or goat mixed with synthetic, we're definitely going to be seeing more of that throughout the brushes coming out, in my opinion. And again, this is not based off of fact. This is just based off of the trends that I've been seeing and what I know of the current availability of things in Japan and China. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on these brush sets. I'd love to know if you picked any of these up or if you picked up the Framboise set that I did not get. Let me know your thoughts on those, and I hope this was helpful. So thank you so much for tuning in. I do have individual videos on the Winter Lights and the Cherry Blossom set if you want to see comparisons with those brushes and see those in a bit more detail. I'll leave those linked down below in the description box. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you very soon.